welcome in, guys, to another spring recap here. I'm Chris Marler. We are joined by two of my very, very good friends, and two dudes that do honestly a better job than almost anybody in our industry with just covering college football in general, but also specifically Georgia football. I was excited to see both of you, and then Josh signed in, and he has that stupid fucking picture behind him on the wall. But we're here to talk about the spring recap and just an overall team update from now the defending national champions, the Georgia Bulldogs. So without further ado, I'm joined by Josh Hancher. I'm joined by Graham Coffey. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm intimidated to be.
Don't do this.
I'm a big Chris Marler fanboy, and so I'm excited to be here.
Well, listen, Graham is not, and we had I think people forget that me and Graham became really good friends based off of a giant Twitter argument from several years ago. For those of you that don't know Graham, he is a very big non-stealer of content, despite what you've heard by some people that overvaluate themselves. But anyway, Graham
every time someone accuses me of stealing content, I get like 500 new followers on social media. So please.
It's pretty sick, bro. But no, we're going to start with a very awkward conversation that Graham and I had last night, which was Graham putting me in check for saying that I am too negative about Georgia. And
since it's my complaint, can I explain it maybe? He's taking his headphones off so he doesn't have to listen to it or be accountable. So look at that.
I missed what you're saying. You were saying what?
Right. No, so I see you pandering, and that's good. That's always a good place to start. My personal opinion is that you're friends with like lots of Georgia fans.
Yeah.
And you get along with them, and like we know you. We know you're not like a terrible person. But like whenever, the like 1% jumps into your mentions, because every fan base has like 1% or like a fringe that's just terrible people, right? And it's like, I'm not gonna act like Georgia doesn't have those because we of course do, but it's like every time one of those people jumps into your mentions, you're like, oh, it never gets old beating these people. Oh, look at these losers. Like you blanket statement, everybody. You think there was a guy that replied to your tweet or my tweet about us doing this podcast that was like, I don't know, Chris sends a lot of mean tweets about Georgia fans. I'm not sure if
okay, and I still love the fact. We're gonna address this. I love the fact that you brought up the thing about it's always great beating these people, because I literally wrote that in a response to somebody saying they hoped all corgis died, and I was an owner of 2 corgis in a past life. But regardless, none of that matters. I think, I do a very bad job of not feeding just the bottom feeders of Twitter. Social media in general, and that's just something that we'll all learn someday and grow from. But no, I am really excited. I think that one of the reasons I even brought that up is all last season I remember talking to you guys about this going into the year and how I thought it was Georgia's year. Y'all felt the same way, and it just looked like it's set up perfectly for Georgia to finally make a run and turn that corner and kind of get over that, get that monkey off their back with Bama.
I can distinctly remember listening to the preseason podcast, and you were talking, and you were just admonishing SEC Twitter for going after Georgia fans, because like you were like point blank, they're going to win it, and when they do, you're going to have to pay for all of the crap that you're talking right now. Sure. So
looking at you, Florida fans.
Yeah, exactly. So you
2008,
you were definitely a believer before I was, because I'm definitely was the camp of I'm not going to believe it till I see it. So
can I share a fun fact since we are here talking about G-Day?
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to say that the prison that you're apparently recording from is really nice. This background you have is it's beautiful right now.
It's map. There's maps.
I can't see it, but yeah. Go ahead, but say something nice.
No, I was just gonna say that since we were at G-Day this year, it reminded me that it was right after G-Day last year, that afternoon, that I placed a bet on Georgia at I believe it was plus 800, plus 850, something like that, to win the national title. And they did. So
yeah,
I won.
Great bet.
$800.
Awesome. But like I remember going throughout the season talking to you guys, and I was just like, anybody knows me knows I get into these deep dives of stats and stuff like that. Nowhere near as good as Josh, but like, some of the stuff that was really standing out to me, like, and it wasn't just defensively, right? And you talk about like, because there's stuff like Stetson Bennett not getting enough credit, I thought, and like, because you would see stuff where people were so upset about the quarterback controversy and saying like, the offense is explosive. And then the Kentucky game specifically, I'll never forget, because it was such a flex of what made that team so great and dominant, and the way they were on defense and the way they would flip the field and force turnovers and all that kind of stuff. But what like Stetson comes back out in the first drive of the half, and they would five plays, 80 yards, all passes over 10 yards or more, I think probably 3 or 4 different receivers. And then next drive, 5 straight runs, 80 yards, ball game. And so it was just throughout the season, it was just very, very clear that they were a different team. And statistically, that definitely proved the case especially on defense. But this is what I said a year ago, and I'm gonna start by giving this take, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel like I am. And I wish I wasn't wearing this shirt when I said it. But I said last year that go after the spring game, it was the first time you could say in the Saban era with Smart that Georgia seemed to have, at least from a depth standpoint, they were better at the skill positions than Bama was. And then that very much came true. And with some of the depth issues that Bama had going into the season.
Well, I mean, I think there's a difference between being deeper and better. I think Jamison and Mechie were especially with Pickens hurt most of the year, they were better than any of the receivers on Georgia's roster last year.
Doubt, yeah.
But Georgia went 10, 12 deep in terms of guys that they could throw the ball to in a game. And we saw what happened when Alabama didn't really develop those secondary options in the second half of the national title game.
Right. So, and the thing is, I remember saying that and people thought I was crazy, because you've seen, especially at that point, the receivers and the production. You're coming off a Heisman Trophy winner with Devontae Smith and these 4 first rounders. But I said that last year, and I went to the game on Saturday in G-Day, and we'll get into the G-Day. And I wasn't expecting to see a drop-off, and not really to be blown away by anything, because it's a spring game. And then all of this may be an overreaction, and I hope it is for my favorite team's sake. But what I saw Saturday, it looked to me much different and much better than what I saw at Alabama. And again, I know this is a spring game, but I expected to go to Georgia and see an offense struggle to run the football and a quarterback, battle of 2 people that weren't super efficient, and their numbers, especially from a completion percentage standpoint, weren't great.
Right.
But I came away with the belief that Georgia has somehow found themselves in a year where they're the defending national champs, where people are already counting them out. It's Bama and Ohio State, and I've even said I thought Bama with the revenge tour and all kind of stuff. But Georgia may have even improved at places where they lost key first-round guys. And besides the secondary, it seems like, and obviously with the Kobe Dean leaving the linebackers, some of these units are going to be just as or even more dominant this season. So let's get started talking about G-Day. What were your biggest takeaways from G-Day on Saturday?
I mean, I agree with you. The thing that popped off the screen is just the amount of skill guys.
Yeah.
You're watching Kenny McIntosh put the old school dream shake on linebackers in the open field. You're seeing Dejan Edwards, who's the 3rd running back, may have been the most impressive of all the running backs on the day. Just what he was doing, some of the moves he made, that's a guy that's going to demand touches. Your second running back catches a 42-yard touchdown pass with a seam route out of the backfield. The depth is kind of overwhelming. And I mean, I guess in the portal era, there is a little bit of worry that comes with that. Cause it's we've been talking about how much 13 personnel is Georgia going to run with these tight ends?
14. Everyone was saying on Saturday.
Right. It's they can just throw. I mean, hell, Seether, the 5th tight end, had 3 really nice catches.
Yeah. And
it got us joking on our podcast. I hope at least once next year, Machin just comes out with a 5 tight end set.
Yeah.
Kind of just to do it. Right. But I think that you've got the skill talent, and there's a ton of it. So I think Georgia is maybe more it's not though, a bunch of receivers showed up on campus this offseason. It's just guys that hadn't been healthy for a while or fully healthy, like Kyrus Jackson and Dominic Blaylock, and Arian Smith has had I think 8 receptions in his career and averages 30 yards a catch as a collegiate football player. So I guess it made a little more sense too. I don't know. I not trying to say this as a like not trying to start an argument with you as an Alabama guy, but like sitting there watching it, I was like, yeah, dude, if I was Jermaine Burton and my like priority was to get targets and you know, hit a certain mark of yards or receptions because that's what I think I need to go to go to the NFL. Like, I'd probably leave this room too because it's stacked and they're
right.
you know, they're more interested in having 8 options that a defense has to account for. So
just perfect timing with the dog barking in the background as well.
Sorry.
No, it's perfect for this theme. This whole aesthetic really plays. So I agree with that. This is what my biggest thing was in talking about with like watching Bama, especially on Saturday, because you saw it happen last year and you saw it happen late in the year. And Josh, you kind of backed me up on this because one of the things I thought that was so impressive, not just Saturday, but just in general, was what Todd Monken has done with this offense. Being able to distribute the football when y'all first got Eric Gilbert and he's already in a tight end room with Darnell Washington. And at the time we hadn't even talked about Brock Bowers or heard of Brock Bowers. And you know, he was still out in fucking wine country or whatever. And so you end up getting the number 1 ranked tight end in the history of recruiting. And I remember thinking, I was like, well, you know, honestly, like, how's he going to distribute the football to keep everyone happy? There's no way to do that because you also have a loaded backfield that I thought would see most of the touches and most of the action. He found a way to do it. In the last 6 games of the season last year, Georgia had at least one player. They had 9 players have at least 1 reception in each game, and that's an incredible job by Todd Monken. And I think
that's a really good stat.
I appreciate that. But I think it speaks volumes about what he's been able to do because, I mean, man, he was doing that. And listen, like, I don't want to get into an injury thing, but he was doing that when the cupboard was kind of bare. Like, he was doing that with Pickens out, and he was doing that with like where he didn't have all of his weapons. You talk about Arian Smith. What I saw on Saturday was you know Brock Bowers is going to be Brock Bowers, right? Arian Smith, Kearis Jackson, some like Eric Gilbert. These are all people that like. I think Kearis Jackson. I've said this for 2 years. I think he is a 1. I think he is receiver 1, even when he was there playing with Pickens, because I thought he was like more complete. And he may not make the free catches or whatever, but I love his like ability, and I think that he's a guy that you can be consistent with as like your go-to guy.
Well, what I was going to say is you can't underestimate. I mean, like, one of the things that Jake Fromm didn't have the benefit of was continuity from an offensive coordinator position. And then after James Coley took over, that was probably one of our worst offenses we've seen in a while. And then, it was a priority in that offseason. Coley was let go and Todd Monken came in. Then COVID came, and then there was, Jake Fromm, I think, from my perspective, left sort of unexpectedly early for the NFL draft. So there was no continuity at quarterback. Then, of course, COVID came. So this was like last year was his first year. We had this players in spring camp. And I mean, now it's like you're going to have, Stetson Bennett starting again under the same offensive coordinator, which hasn't happened at Georgia in a long time.
Right.
And to your point, I mean, he did it with sort of kind of a mash unit much of this year, even this year. I mean, Georgia was banged up early in the season. So, this is what we're seeing now is like a continuity of offense, which is what Kirby's always brought on defense. No matter who comes and goes off the defensive staff, Kirby is providing that continuity. Now we're getting that at truly, a gifted play caller and a guy that really knows how to work an offense. And that's, I think, what a lot of Georgia fans are quite excited about is the offense. I mean, it's not as exciting and as awesome as 2017 was. That was an offense that ran it almost 60%.
69%.
Yeah, 67, 69. Yeah. So this is a different offense. And JT came and said it, in his first, I think it was his first game, Mississippi State game, when he came in and said, you got 5-star players, you're going to throw it to them. And that's what Georgia, a lot of Georgia fans have wanted for a long time. So it's pretty exciting to see it throw it around. 90 targets in the G-Day game, 90 targets.
And that's like, you could say, but maybe they're just getting work in, because like it's going to be hard to run against that front four. But at the same time, I think that this is where the offense was, and this is where my biggest take on this is like if I'm not saying that Georgia has overtaken Alabama completely and surpassed Bama into like what Mike Griffith said, ships in the night bullshit from a couple years ago. What I'm saying is that I think that like if I'm going into the season, I'm way more confident on offense and defense with what Georgia has than I am with Alabama, and Alabama has the reigning Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. Now, I may be completely wrong about that. And I'm sure Bama's going to be fine on offense. But when you talk about like running the football, they're going to be able to run the football. Monken has quietly become, in my opinion, one of the best play callers, like in the play design in the entire country. And he doesn't get enough credit for that because you look at like at every level of a drive. I mean, they had 15 total explosive plays of like, what was it for to 9 or 10 different players. They had at least one play over 20 yards, 9 or 10. And that's what you expect to see from that offense. And they did a lot of it on third down. They did it in key situations. And then you get into the red zone and they just were flooding passes to Eric Gilbert and setting up mismatches everywhere, which is what you're supposed to do. I don't think I'm crazy to think that this offense might be even better, obviously, than last year.
Well, Graham has pointed this out a bunch about, and has broken down Todd Monken when he was hired and throughout, everyone thinks of it as an air raid or spread offense. It's not, he wants to run the ball as much as he throws it. I mean, we actually ran it more time as a higher percentage last year than we did the year before. And, he had, when he was head coach at Southern Miss, he had 2,000-yard rushers in one season.
Yeah. Yeah. He had, I think, 1,000-yard or 2,000-yard receivers and 2,000-yard rushers on the same team, if I recall correctly. Like he can distribute the ball around, but I think the thing that a lot of people maybe don't recognize about Monken is how committed he is to like the long con.
Yeah.
In terms of Georgia, what they do on offense when they're in a game that's within 2 scores versus what they do once they get up 14, 17 points, night and day. And that Kentucky game was a great example of it, where it was kind of like they flipped a switch and it sort of went from kind of some of the vanilla play calling to like, okay, we need a touchdown drive. Here's a halfback angle route to James Cook that nobody's seen us run all year. Boom, touchdown, on 3rd and 4. Like I've been told by quite a few people that I trust that like we still have not seen probably half the stuff in his playbook over the 2 years that he's been at Georgia. So I think there's a ton there. And the Alabama game was a good example of kind of, the national title game was a situation where like you sort of saw him set a lot of stuff up for 3 quarters and credit to the defense for allowing them to never really get in a spot like where it was urgent. Because when you saw what happened in the SEC title game where you lost the run pass conflict and it was kind of a disaster for Georgia in that second half. But, the defense was able to keep that game close, and it really kind of allowed him to play the chess match that he wanted to play. And then in that 4th quarter, a lot of stuff that had kind of been set up or that they had shown Alabama in those first 3 quarters, all of a sudden you started seeing different variations of it. And I think that's kind of why they won that game and had that really nice closing stretch for the offense. But what I think with Georgia in 2022 is like, and I hate to bring it up, but the question for everybody, we're
not doing that. We're not doing this on the fucking show.
No, I'm just saying it's like all those weapons, you have them, but you have to distribute the ball to them consistently. And I think like Stetson Bennett was an efficient point guard last year, but like we're talking about, it's like, I think that I don't know that like he will have to take another step forward in 2022 if Georgia wants to be a team that consistently throws the ball 30, 35 times a game and wants to play that style of football. And I think that there might be some moments depending on kind of how things shake out with the schedule, but I do think there will be moments where they have to, be in a shootout in a way that they weren't last year. And that is something that is a question mark despite all the talent, just because it's different, right? And it's just a different type of game plan and execution.
I think that's fair. And this is the 3rd or 4th year that we've gotten into who should be starting at quarterback, Stetson Bennett or blank. So I really don't want to do that on this episode.
No. I'm not trying to do that.
No, I know, but I do want to talk about like who's getting the ball. Like, and the biggest takeaway from the spring game at least, was Eric Gilbert and just how everyone's like, fawning over that. We talked about the 14 personnel. Realistically, you're probably not going to see 14 personnel or 15 personnel like you guys joked about on your show. But like realistically, what do you see coming from this tight end group and the receivers in terms of like distributing the ball or how they're going to set up in Monken's offense specifically? Because you don't have a guy like Pickens who's just a vertical threat, right? That like, he's got one pitch.
Arian Smith would be that guy.
Cool. So you do have that. Okay.
I mean, he's going to take the top off of every defense that he plays if he's healthy, just because he's a track star. He can run 2 routes, basically. I mean, that's what we've seen to this point is basically like he's going to run, a hitch or a go, which is kind of what George was. And, George is about to be a high round draft pick. Like, I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but I do think that, it's with all the tight ends, I think it's going to be very intriguing just because there's going to be certain teams that Georgia faces where I think they're just going to kind of like come out and play with their food in the sense of, all right, here's 3 tight ends. If you want to go heavy, go ahead. And, we'll just send Eric Gilbert or Brock Bowers or whoever deep, and your linebacker can try and cover him in man, which we know he's not going to be able to do.
Right.
Or you want to stay light on your feet and protect against the pass, then we're just going to pound you in the run with these big bodies.
I have a technical football question. Okay. So if you run out those guys, now technically because of their jersey number, are all of them eligible? I mean, that's ridiculous to think about.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're all eligible.
So
I mean, you can't put all of them on the
line, right?
Line of scrimmage.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
This entire offense has the potential to be like Iowa's wet dream of all time. Just tight ends everywhere. I mean, everywhere.
Well, I mean, the tight end that can do what that Monken wants to do in terms of catching the ball, but also put his hand on the ground and block is the guy that's going to get a chance. I mean, I think Arik is going to be probably, lined up, in the slot or, in a more pass catching, but, Darnell and Bowers, I think, if they block, I mean, it's exactly, I mean, they're going to just guard, and put a guy, DB or linebacker on Arik, and now whether he can beat him or not, it's great. But it's just that, what's he going to do? Is he going to block or is he going to go out? And that's the exciting part for sure.
So this is a question.
We haven't even talked about Oscar Delp yet.
We're not going to either. Because South Carolina fans are going to be upset.
7 catches, 91 yards.
We didn't talk about him, and he led the entire unit in yards and receptions. So it's like just a wealth of talent there. Here's my question: is this? Am I crazy for thinking the following? You bring up all the tight ends. It is going to be hard to distribute all that. Darnell Washington is a physical freak that looks like he would be a no-brainer to go to the NFL and still. He's 6'8". Like that's. You can't defend it, right? He has not seen a lot of production, I feel like, in his time in Athens. I think if you're looking at one guy on the roster from the offensive standpoint, and I'm not going to throw out any offensive linemen because y'all got too many 4 and 5 stars that aren't going to play. But is that the guy that is most likely to enter the transfer portal, or how do you see him getting used in the offense this year?
It's tough, right? Because he hasn't been healthy, and I think like that's a little bit of a tough situation to try and transfer when, I mean, like, it's like now that we're in this kind of modern age of free agency, it's like you don't see an NFL team sign a guy coming off of an injury unless their doctor gets to do a physical on him, right? So it's like I have questions about how that works, I guess, but I think there's potential there, right? Like I mean, there's been whispers around that in the past, but he also, met with the media a couple of weeks ago and said, I've never considered transferring. So I don't know. I mean, it would make logical sense. At the same time, I'm still under the belief that if Darnell Washington decided tomorrow that he wanted to be a tackle and put on 20 pounds, he would be a top 10 overall pick in the NFL draft in 18 months.
I think, maybe, I don't know if this is factoring into it, and I'm going to wildly speculate here, but I mean, Georgia has put in, tight ends in the league that weren't pass catchers. They've got guys ready for the combine. I mean, this is the day and age where you don't have to have, 70 targets a year and, 15 touchdowns to be recognized by NFL talent. I mean, if he's on this roster and he's going to get a chance he's going to be drafted. And I think he's probably weighing that in. It's like, do I want to be, one of the good guys, one of a really fantastic group of tight ends at Georgia, or do I want to go be the man somewhere else? And I think, I think he's leaning towards staying here because, we put guys in the league from the tight end spot that don't, get a lot of balls thrown to him, but I think he is. I think he's the guy. If he's healthy, like Graham said, he was unhealthy for a large portion of the season. I think he wasn't healthy in the national championship game even.
Oh, I'm sorry, that sucks, man.
100%. No excuses.
Yeah, man, if we had our top 2 tight ends in the national championship,
shut the fuck. We're not doing this. We're not doing this.
There we are.
For the win.
Yeah. No, I've said, and I always stand by it, that if there's anything I've learned as my time in Athens and being on Georgia Feds, I know ACLs don't matter. You barely need them. I know I don't use mine, so I've put on so much weight since college. No, so like looking at it, like we'll talk briefly about the quarterback situation. I think Carson Beck has done really, really well. Kirby's been very vocal about the fact that no one's taking over that spot from Stetson, right? But I do think Gray made a good point about how there's a lot of, in most seasons, you're not going to have the benefit of what y'all had last year on defense, and a quarterback's got to go out there and just win you a football game. There's no way you're going to run a 2-quarterback system, right?
No. Georgia's not going to run 2. I mean, I will say, people inside of the program, I think that there was a little bit of frustration on the side of the coaching staff with kind of sort of the Stetson celebration tour maybe went on a little bit too long into the offseason, and he maybe didn't show up to spring practice quite in the manner they wanted him to early on. And so I think they kind of sent a message and challenged him from a leadership standpoint. What Kirby Smart said that I think is great news for Georgia is Stetson has kind of cut out a lot of those sort of WTF plays. He would have one kind of YOLO play a half last year where it was dude, why are you, rolling left back across your body, trying to, throw a alley-oop between the leg touchdown pass?
Different sports, but yeah, for sure.
I know that's my point, but I guess what I'm saying is you don't want to rule out Carson Beck,
right?
And that's just because I think that he made better decisions more consistently on Saturday in that football game. As Josh and I talked about, who gets to be the starter? Is it going to have, it's not based on G-Day. It's based on every practice, every day, and the cumulative, effect of those and how those guys grade out. So I do think that Carson Beck offers a higher ceiling than Bennett. I also think he offers probably a lower floor, right? So question of how much do you trust your defense? Are you in a situation different than last year where you say, I'm willing to take some risks on offense because I feel like I have to because I don't have a generational front seven that can just bail me out of everything. I don't know. I think Stetson will start the Oregon game. It wouldn't shock me to see. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he wasn't the starter come December when, you get to Atlanta or your bowl game or whatever. But I also wouldn't be shocked if he was because it's yes, the way he played on G-Day was very kind of uncharacteristic of how he played the rest of the 2021 season.
We joked around on the podcast. It seemed like he was still on the celebration tour and just Big Dick Stetson was out there just doing what he wanted. It was there were some throws I was like, why would he do that? But okay, so we've got into a lot of the positives and stuff like that and these different units and we didn't even touch the running backs, which we probably don't have time for, but a lot of tremendous talent there. Let's get into the defense a little and also talk about the one position I know you've been pretty vocal about, or one position unit that may be an area of concern and probably the weakest one, which isn't saying much on the team. That's the defensive backs. Would you agree that is the one? Okay, the weak link. How do you see that playing out, I guess, going into the start of the year? Who's starting and what do you see that's going to be how do they avoid what Bama did in Atlanta last year?
Well, you got Tyke Smith, who was, transferred in, didn't play last year because of injury. So he is going to be a veteran there and he will be an improvement he's going to be rock solid. You got Christopher Smith and you got Keely Ringo. So there's 3 guys right there that are veterans that they're going to get the job done. Now, who starts the opposite corner? I don't think we may not have seen that player in G-Day, and we saw some after last year. We saw some additions after G-Day in the defensive backfield, specifically Darian Kendrick. So I think that is a concern. I don't think it's my number one concern on the team, actually.
Bigger.
So it is probably the biggest question mark right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Like I think that's an area where that's a really good point about hit the transfer portal for that specific spot, and it's especially if they were able to do it last year, before and after the spring, right? With Tyke and then also with Kendrick. You guys watch more tape than anyone I know. Every time, see, I always say I'm gonna start watching tape, and there's like a marathon of The Office on. I'm like, I kind of want to go watch this more instead. So, like Jalen Carter is a guy that I think people were saying is like, the most. He's like not very well known, but he will be. I think everyone who knows who Jalen Carter is at this point. There's no doubt about it.
He's our best fullback on the team.
Yeah, exactly. I think obviously he's going to be a stud in the first round pick and a force this year. But give us some guys. You replace a lot of talent, not just a little bit, but generational talent at several positions. Who are the guys that are going to replace the Kobe Dean and some of the others in that front seven? And then who are the people you think by season's end are going to be, basically stars that people don't know right now?
Okay, so two names I'll give you. On the defensive front, we know we have Jalen Carter up there as the tackle. You've got Robert Beal and Nolan Smith as those two kind of edge guys.
Right.
So, like those guys are sort of known commodities, I believe. But when you talk about the middle of the defense, that's where all that has been lost, the two D tackle spots and then the inside linebacker core. But I think Tyree and Ingram Dawkins is a guy he's a 300-pound guy. He's a D tackle, redshirt freshman, didn't really play much at all last year, was injured during fall camp, got some reps, I think, late in the season in some games, but he showed out on G-Day. I mean, like when we went back over the tape, it's just he was everywhere, and he was penetrating into the backfield, and he was doing it against the first team offensive line, and just did a really, really good job of being explosive and being disruptive. And you pair that next to Jalen Carter, like having Jalen Carter next to him will ensure that he will see a lot of one-on-one blocking assignments. And I think he's a guy that can take advantage of that. What also impressed me is just that even at 300 pounds, there were situations where they lined him up on the edge, kind of in that old Trevon Walker buck in spot where they like to have that heavier style D end. And he was speed rushing past Broderick Jones, which, is saying a lot.
I can tell you firsthand
what he did. Yeah, totally. So I think that's the one, like the next, I think he will be a, first, second round kind of draft pick in a couple of years. Like we'll know his name and talk about how he was on the team with all these other guys that just went through the combine. But at inside linebacker, I was really impressed with Tresman Marshall. Josh and I talked about him a lot. Like just, he was everywhere. He had an interception in the game, almost had two more, had his hands on two other balls that Stetson threw. Just, I was a lot of young inside linebackers struggle in coverage. That's usually the hardest thing for those guys to get. I mean, they know how to go and run in
space.
They know how to try and rush the passer. They can find the ball in the run game, but he was really, really good in man coverage and zone coverage. And I think that, he's going to end up in one of those spots, probably next to Jamon Dumas-Johnson, who everybody raved about. There wasn't any kind of wow play from him on G-Day, right, but that he's sort of in the buzz of spring practice and even like bowl practices last year.
Okay, so real quick,
I want to jump in. Two names too that you might want to add in there, especially on that front defensive front, is Nazir Stackhouse.
Mm-hmm.
He's in his third year on campus as a 4-star, and then you got Warren Brinson. I think and Nazir had a pretty good game on Saturday too.
Brinson was super disruptive, and Zion Logue, who's kind of already a known commodity. He's played a lot of snaps.
That's fair. All right, so last part of all this, I know this is the thing that makes me so high on Georgia again, because we've talked about all these position units and all the talent, and we know how well Kirby's recruited. Another reason I think that you're looking at a situation where, like earlier I said that Georgia, I think I better say they were even being overlooked. They're not being looked at as the national championship front runner, right? Like I don't get the sense going into the season that they're the ones that have the biggest target on their back, even in their own conference, because of Bama, for just because of what Nick's created over there in Tuscaloosa for so long. If you're looking at this schedule, there's not a lot there that gives you any area of concern, right? Is there a game? Is there a point of the year that would maybe they slip up? Or is this a situation where, and this isn't being arrogant or you guys being homers, But being realistic here, or is this just something where they're going 12-0 and then the real challenge comes in the postseason starting in Atlanta?
It would be a different mindset to accept that, your worst case scenario is just a bad week in the rain and you lose a game.
Yeah.
And that's where Bama has been for every season under Nick Saban, it seems like, since he got it rolling. So I'm not really ready to go there because Auburn always scares me because it can be chaos, and we get Auburn at home this year. But, and Florida's, and Kentucky. To answer your question, no, I'm scared to death of every single game on our schedule. I'm just not.
I think it's more of a you thing.
Yeah, no, 100% me thing. I'm not going to be. I'm not the guy that's on Twitter being like, "Oh, we're going to kill you. I'm going to, bookmark this tweet and come at you." No, I've been humbled enough as a Georgia fan that. But no, yes, last year's schedule set up nicely for Georgia. This year's schedule certainly it kind of mirrors it in the sense that you get a sort of Oregon's not quite the they're not a playoff. They've only had one playoff in the playoff era. But yeah, you get a big game on national TV to start the season, and then sort of you can kind of dial it in and get ready for the meat of the SEC season, and then hopefully be playing a good team from the West, maybe Texas A&M, maybe Alabama.
Also, not enough can be said about that first week's game against what is definitely and unequivocally the best team in the state of Oregon, and the only good team in the state of Oregon. And
dude, Oregon State is my sleeper Pac-12 title.
You want to fucking do this right now?
Why'd you have to say sleep with her?
Are you serious? No. Are you being serious?
Oh,
sleepers.
No, I'm not being serious about. I do have Oregon State as a sleeper team, but sorry. Moot point. Let me talk about Georgia, Oregon, week 1. I do think that's a really tough game just because Lanning knows Georgia inside out. But I also think Lanning is basically trying to teach his guys the new defense that Kirby Smart has installed many times over and over, installs every offseason. So I think there's probably a little bit of advantage that goes to Georgia's way for Mock and be able to sit down and be like, what's the hardest thing for guys to get a handle on this defense when you install it every year, and being able to kind of try and exploit that for Oregon. But that's going to be an interest. Oregon returns a lot on their offensive line.
They also return Bo Nix.
Yeah. Well, but I don't know. It's like Cristobal did a good job of building the trenches on that team.
Yeah.
That, in a way where it mirrors, more like an SEC program than what you expect from a Pac-12 team. So I think that's going to be a physical game. It's just, I don't think that Oregon is winning a grinded out style football game against Georgia. I just don't see that happening. The game that scares me, it's not South Carolina. I'm sorry. It's just, I don't see it. But the game that scares me a little bit for Georgia is actually that Mississippi State game in,
on the road, right?
On the road, November 12th, right after playing Tennessee at home, which, is right after the Florida game. So you'll be coming right for Kentucky, Tennessee. Right. And Kentucky is a great team. Don't get me wrong. I think
you guys are so fucking well-versed at coach speak. It's unbelievable right now.
Well, no, it's not. What I'm going to say about Kentucky is just Kentucky's built a lot like Georgia. They're built to be physical on the line and all of that. It's kind of the same thing I feel about Oregon. It's you're not beating Georgia in a physical, grinded out, pound the rock kind of football game. So unless Will Levis is going to drop bombs and pass for 350 yards, I don't think they're losing it. But yeah, that Mississippi State game scares me a little bit just because that, the last time Georgia faced that offense, they struggled.
It was a 24-17 game.
No,
I think it was 28-24 or 31-28. I mean, it was Georgia was down basically that entire game. And Mississippi State was going on 10-minute drives at points in that game. And they did not do a good job of handling that air raid. And so it's going to be interesting to see that, because that is the type of situation where Mississippi State gets up, a couple possessions real quick on you. They're up 10, 14 points. They're at home. Those cowbells are ringing and everybody starts to get a little tight. And Georgia, as we've talked about, like hasn't really been designed, at least to this point, to be that team that wants to get into a shootout. So that's
about the secondary being the weak link of the team, and like that,
right.
that offense is we know what it is in terms of a, like, I think people sometimes have the misperception that a Mike Leach offense is this high flying offense and they're throwing the ball all over the field, but it really is just like
it's possession,
runs through the air, man. It's like it's these very short, quick receptions, just like death by a thousand paper cuts, and they've had a guy that's had the most. They've had a guy in the top 10 for almost every single year Mike Leach has been a head coach in the last decade, right? I think it's like 7 of the last 10 years. They've had somebody at least in the top 10, usually in the top 2 or 3 in terms of passing yards. He's never had a quarterback in the last decade, at least, that has been as efficient and good as Will Rogers has been. And Will Rogers has been largely unnoticed because of the quarterback, talent that's in this league. But a guy that's completing 75% of his passes, that could be tough for secondary. So I could see that. That makes sense too.
Yeah, that's the one for me.
What's that?
No, I was just saying that's the one for me that, like, I think, I don't know. I do think that, like, Georgia, this is probably the easiest Georgia schedule of my lifetime.
No, I was told on. You know what? Never mind. I'm not gonna say that.
Well, it was. Let me just jump in. One thing about the schedule. Now that you say we're not the target on our back, there's no way the national championship champion is not a target on the back, and Georgia's got to do that, where you get your opponent's best games, and instead of that, maybe in a 4:00 SEC network game at Starkville, that could be the ESPN night game, and you talk about you're gonna get everyone's. You're gonna be in the better games than you were, and so you're gonna have be tougher environments all around. I think
you guys might, maybe I should have phrased it like this: like, you guys might have a target on your back, but if you do, and you were to quote unquote, like, metaphorically get shot, it would be like in like Fast and Furious type movies when it's like somebody shoots Vin Diesel, but he's like, it doesn't hurt him because he's not human, or like like The Rock. That's basically what's gonna happen with Georgia this year. You're gonna face Kentucky's best shot. You're gonna beat him by 14 plus points. Everyone knows that.
I feel like this is a psychological operation that you're doing.
You guys, I'm so tired of this. You guys,
right.
I can never say anything and give you guys credit and then like have it be taken seriously, which is my own fault, Graham. We know.
Well, here, let me say this. I think that for all the pressure that comes with being a defending national champion, like, it's a little bit different for Georgia just because this fan base is like, I feel like this is like a gap year for Georgia fans, right? Where it's like, man, I don't know that there's that much that could happen, like, barring, a 9-3 or 8-4 regular season, that anyone's going to be really, truly upset about. But imagine how upset Alabama fans would be if Georgia, like, was to go back to back, or to beat them twice in a row in a situation if they met.
It would be awful.
Or in the playoff again. Like, I think that would be kind of a seismic shift in the power structure of the SEC that would change things in a way that we haven't seen in about 15 years. And so,
I want to say here,
think that's a lot of pressure on Bama.
Well, okay. It is like, Bama also goes on the road to play Texas and has a actual difficult schedule. But I don't think Bama's concerned with Georgia right now, no matter what Twitter would tell us. I will say this.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I think the pressure is on Alabama as a program to go and win a title after seeing Georgia do it, because it's like, it's the same way that it felt. I don't know, like the 2019 LSU goes and wins one, and then Bama goes and answers in 2020. It's like every time an SEC school has won a national title in the Saban era, Bama has, like, basically immediately followed it up with a national title of their own to kind of, like, reassert dominance. And
I don't know if people know this, but this is like an incredible flex, but you only have one instance or two, I guess, where you've had back-to-back years with Bama not playing for the title. There's only been twice in the Saban era where you've gone 2 total years that Bama hasn't played for the title. And that was when he first got there in 07 and 08, and it was in 13 and 14. Because they were in the playoff that year. So I understand that, but the pressure, I think, is always there. I was going to give you shit for saying the thing, like, immediately putting it on, like, if they lose to Georgia and throwing out that hypothetical. But then I also remember that I said vocally several times at the beginning of last year that I thought Bama wasn't going to be as good, but it would be awesome if we went 11-1 or 10-2 and then beat Georgia and rip their heart out in Atlanta, which we did, but effectively did not matter. So I think that like, yeah, this rivalry is not going to go away, but I do think it's shifting, and I'll be the first to say this is one of the points of this whole thing is that I think it has shifted in terms of. I think Georgia might be like a little bit ahead of where, like, if you talk about like projections. Again, I like where Georgia's at a little bit more than Bama, not only this year but moving forward. So there's that. I'm gonna get fucking canceled by my own fan base.
Sandbagging son of a bitch.
You guys are. This is such bullshit. I can't say anything nice to you people. Oh my gosh. Honestly, like if I would have known that this many nice things, I was gonna say this many nice things and it'd be this fruitless. I just would have proposed to both of you and been engaged to you. You know what I mean? Like that's all it is.
Let me ask you this question though, before I know we're almost nearing the end of this, but like you alluded to earlier, you watched the Georgia spring game in person, you watched the Bama spring game where the defending Heisman Trophy winner couldn't put up more than 7 points.
Okay, but he also just torched the shit out of you guys in like a calendar month prior, so let's not forget about that.
No, I'm talking about the spring game.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I'm just so used to the same argument. My bad.
No. I'm saying like, you said earlier you watched the spring games and you felt like Georgia's maybe a little bit ahead of Bama in some ways. Like, what are you, like what do you
why
really
is that?
believe in? Like, well, I guess why is that? But more so if you're talking about 2022. And how those teams match up. What scares you as an Alabama fan about Georgia?
No, so this is what I said last year, and people, I think a decent amount of people remember me saying it, but I understand sometimes the villain that is possibly played on Twitter, and I've done a lot of this myself. But I said over and over and over last year why Georgia was the better team and why Georgia was going to win the national championship, start of the season, during the season, and going into the national championship game. They were going to win that game, or they were going to win that championship because they did all the little things that champions do. They didn't have a bunch of like dumb penalties. They didn't turn the ball. Are you guys talking to each other right now?
No, I was actually looking at looking at futures. I want to.
So they're like, they did all the little things that you do as a champion to win games, right? Like, and case in point, again, the Kentucky game where it's like you get a 3rd and 1 stop with the SEC's leading running back, and then you flip the field and you don't make mistakes and you force your opponent. With this suffocating defense and efficient offense, you force them into mistakes, and just like that, you're up by 2 scores and it's over. Like I've one time, or maybe a couple times in Saban's era, you had the feeling like in 2011, if Bama gets to 9 points, it's over because that defense was giving up like less than 8 points a game, and they were like historically and statistically the best defense of all time until like what we saw last year. All season, I saw a more disciplined, I saw a deeper. And I saw a team that from start to finish seemed more focused than Alabama. It was Georgia.
Sure, but what about 2022?
So going into 2022, the biggest concern is the offensive line. And you get into the spring game where you have 15 sacks allowed. And now it's a spring game and Will Anderson's the best player in the country. But again, where I didn't see someone struggle with Will Anderson? January in Indianapolis. I didn't see him take over a game like that. And when you have Nick Saban come in to like say on camera, and it was funny, it's cool. And Will Anderson, I think Will Anderson by season's end will be considered the best defensive player we have seen in college football in the last 25 years. I think that's the kind of impact he's had. I think that's how good he is. But at the same time, when you have Saban saying, we don't have a left tackle.
Better.
Huh?
Jalen Carter's better.
Okay, cool. But so I'm not going to do this to you guys again. But they don't have the stats. But no, like when you talk about, we don't have a left tackle that can block them. And then you look at, well, yeah, he's so good. That's probably why. But you have a roster that has signed the number 1 offensive tackle and number 2 offensive tackle in the same class 2 years ago, signed another 5-star offensive lineman last year. They've never struggled like they're struggling now on the offensive line. And on top of that, I think that they're going to be like, I know I sound like the sky is falling, all that kind of shit. But I watched Bama all year last year not do the little things well to win games. pre-snap penalties. They were they had the game against A&M where
Bill O'Brien stink that you guys got on your
that has nothing to do. Bill O'Brien was really good last year, but you did little things that not well, where you had penalties, turnovers, and they should have lost to LSU. So you rushed the ball for 6 yards. So all these things that were the highest they had been in the Saban era, and they were bottom line an undisciplined team, and they were unfocused at times, and they didn't do the little things well to win. That they just had possibly the two best players in the country on offense and on defense. The other thing is this, and Jermaine Burton is, by all means, he's had rave reviews going into the season. He's going to have his numbers. He'll probably have this season. He'll have more yards and catches than he had in the 2 years combined he was at Georgia. Just because the way that offense is run. That's why he went there. It makes sense. But from a physical standpoint, Jermaine Burton does nothing for me to make me worried about having to match up with him. I don't see.
He's a phenomenal route runner, but he's not physically gonna. I mean, he's 6 feet tall. Right,
and I mean, Devontae Smith is a guy that was, he wasn't somebody physically that was going to scare you, but he also was we watched him constantly get open. I don't see that. I don't see. And maybe it's the same thing with at some point the quarterback situation is going to have to take a step back, or with Georgia losing all the talent on defense, at some point you can't just keep going up and up, right?
Right.
But when you have 4 receivers taken in the first round in the 2 year span, the top 15, you have 3 of the past 6 Biletnikoff winners. You have, or I'd say 2 of the last 4 Biletnikoff winners, and you're going to have another first rounder this year. At some point, the production has to drop off, and I don't see anybody on that roster that is on that level as those receivers were. So that's my concern.
That's fair. Do you want to hear my really hot take?
What is it?
So
is it about fucking Oregon State? Because no,
it's not. But I do think, you kind of alluded to it, philosophically right now, what Kirby Smart is doing in Athens is pretty much everything that we saw Nick Saban do from the time he showed up at LSU until about 4 or 5 years ago, where he became the guy who was defense can't win games anymore. You got to be able to go out and score 40 points. And there's an element of truth to that, right? We have seen modern college football change, but I still think, especially in the SEC, football games are won in the line of scrimmage more often than not. And, Georgia, kind of listened to that. And I mean, that was the hot take from every college football analyst for 2 years on Kirby Smart was Nick Saban has said how important it is to have an offense, and Kirby's still a defense first coach.
Right.
And we saw that cash in for a national title last year, but it's there's just a very different mentality that comes with we're not going to give up more than 17 points a game to anybody we're playing versus let's go out there and let Bryce sling it around for 400 yards. And I don't know. It's just, it feels like there's a little bit, and maybe it's all you're talking about the production issue with all these guys that have gone to the NFL. It's I think that coaches in their own way, you can look at that and be Bama has lost so much production when it comes to assistant coaches, and so much culture wise when it comes to the assistants in the program, that I think there's maybe not the same edge that you once had when it came to being we're going to bludgeon everybody to death versus becoming more of a finesse football team. And, we saw that work. It can work both ways. 2020 Bama is maybe the best football team we've ever seen, right? It's not, there hasn't been some cratering or anything like that, but it is kind of weird to see, to sit back and watch Georgia and Alabama. And I know I'm going to take heat from somebody for saying this, but it's if I had to pick one for culture right now, it's I'd probably pick Georgia's culture over Alabama.
I'm glad you said that. People will probably take that seriously, but if I said that, there would also be, I mean, culturally, that's a different thing. I will say the one thing I don't like about y'all's culture is when you guys keep using the fucking 404 thing in the recruiting pitches.
No, that's Georgia Tech.
No. You guys will post all these pictures when it's a thing of the A.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago. We haven't done the Atlanta skyline.
We had to
people don't forget.
Once everybody realized that Jeff Collins wasn't going to do anything, they were we don't have to worry about that anymore.
But he goes to Waffle House.
Graham, if I can just jump in here, I know we got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But, to what you were just saying, Graham, it's defense, offense. It's both. You got to put them both together. And,
Right.
one of the things you and I talk about, Graham, on our show is sort of the efficiency. When we talk about offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency, but, you look at yards per play and you look both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And the last 3 champions have had, one of the highest net yards per play, where you take the offensive yard per play and subtract the defensive yards per play. And again, that team was.
What was Georgia's net yards per play last year? Do you know off the top of your head?
It was 2.7, I believe. It was ridiculous.
What was
Trying to tell me that stat all year long, and I did not want to listen to it at all.
20. Alabama. It was a little different because it was all SEC schedule, so it was a little down. But I still think that 2020
like
out
2.4, right?
Yeah. I think Alabama 2020 in terms is, offensively was just one of the best teams ever. Yeah. They were better than Burrow and as good as, that's not easy. LSU was friggin' great,
right.
But Alabama was friggin' greater.
Yeah.
So,
we'll close on that.
Well, to Josh's point, I think everyone, I'm in some UGA chats on Twitter where it's like,
yeah, you told me about them.
There's Georgia fans that are really, really kind of, I think, bothered by the fact that Georgia hasn't had the 1,000-yard receivers, and they worry that that's going to affect the recruiting
right
as time goes on. And I think that's a valid concern to have, but I think there's a misnomer, and Josh can lay out all the reasons why this is the case, but it's Georgia's offense last year and Georgia's passing game in particular was extremely efficient. It wasn't super high output in terms of yardage and touchdowns and all of that. But Stetson Bennett was top 4 in college football in yards per an attempt.
Right.
He was top 4 in college football in passing efficiency. Flip side is he was one of the bottom 3 or 4 SEC quarterbacks in depth adjusted accuracy, which may be, something to be concerned about moving forward, just to play both sides of the fence here. But I do think Georgia's, you brought up the Todd Monken thing earlier. It's Georgia's offense last year was way better than anybody really, I think, ever wanted to realize or give credit for it. Just it kind of showed up in different ways than your traditional stat sheet.
Yeah. Well, and the good news is we have a long time to talk about it because it's a while for the season. But this was great, guys. I appreciate it. We'll wrap it up there and tell everyone where you guys can be found on social media. Obviously, with the show, they do a great podcast as well as a live show, which is I watched it twice. I watched it twice on Saturday. Yeah, so my girlfriend was not happy about that, but it's fine because I have a girlfriend now, so we can talk about it.
She's a Georgia fan, though, right?
I don't want to talk about that. She bought me this stupid fucking shirt, so
that's cool, dude.
Yeah, but give you guys some plugs, and then we'll get on out of here.
Check us out. We are Dawg Sports Live on YouTube. And we're looking to do a lot in this spring, so please stay tuned with that. I am at dog_stats on Twitter, and I do a lot of stuff there, and dogsports.com.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Dawg Out West. Yeah, like Josh said, please check us out, Dawg Sports Live on YouTube. We've got some cool projects coming up that we'll be sharing some news on here in the next couple of weeks, and lots of fun ways to keep bringing you guys content on the horizon. So come and tune in. And if you're a Bama fan, please, you're welcome to come. We will have, as long as you don't, MF us into the dirt over and over. I would love to have really fun, intelligent football conversations with some Bama fans. So please come and check us out if you haven't already.
Love it. All right, guys, we will talk to you soon.